The question I want to talk about is, what is knowledge? That's a major philosophical problem. And so I want to introduce the topic. What does it mean to have knowledge? Think about the difference between someone who says, I know it's raining outside, or I believe it's raining outside. What's the difference of those two statements? Well, obviously, if somebody says, I believe it's raining outside, they're expressing a degree of uncertainty. They're saying, I believe it's raining outside, but I don't know. I don't really know. Maybe it's not raining outside. On the other, if somebody says, I know it's raining outside, they're expressing certainty. They are certain it's raining outside. So, what does it... Philosophers are very interested in trying to come up with a definition that can capture what we mean by knowing something. Or another way to put it is they try to come up with the definition of knowledge. What does it mean to have knowledge of something? Before I get into that, what philosophers have decided on that issue, and they really haven't reached any agreement, it's still a debatable subject, but a distinction has to be made between three types of knowing that philosophers have made. One is knowing that, another is knowledge that. I'll talk about these and I'll explain them in a second. Then there's know-how knowledge and knowledge by acquaintance. Philosophers are mainly interested in the question of knowing that or knowledge that. Another name for that is propositional knowledge. I know that today is Tuesday. I know that 2 and 2 is 4. So propositional knowledge has to do with knowing that a certain proposition or a certain statement or claim is true. I know that George Washington was the first president of the United States. That's a proposition. Washington was the first president of the United States. That statement is either true or false. And when you know something, if you know something, then you know it's true. If what you think you know is not true, then you didn't know it. So that's one type of knowledge. Knowledge that. Another type, and that's what philosophers are mainly interested in. Another type of knowledge is know-how knowledge, which is a type of knowledge where you know how to do something. I know, for example, how to tie my shoes. If you ask me to write a little essay or a paragraph on how to tie my shoes, I wouldn't be able to do it unless I actually tied my shoes and watched myself tying my shoes and then kind of described what I was doing. I know how to ride a bike, but if you asked me to state that in statements and propositions, I wouldn't be able to do it. So know-how knowledge, that's very different from propositional knowledge. We know how to do many things in life, but when you know how to do something, what you know how to do is not true or false. I know how to ride a bike, but my knowing how to ride a bike is not true and it's not false. The only things that can be true or false are propositions or statements. Statements have a subject and a verb. Today is Monday, the cat is on the mat. Apples are sweet, whatever. Only statements or propositions can be true or false. Know-how knowledge, knowing how to do something, is not true and it's not false. And then there's also a knowledge that Bertrand Russell talks about is knowledge by acquaintance, when you're acquainted with something. So if you know a person, because I know John, I know Kathy, it means you've been acquainted with them, you've met them. or your knowledge of the color red. You see the color red, you perceive it. That's knowledge by acquaintance. And again, that's not true or false. When I look at the color red or the color blue, or I hear a sound, I'm acquainted with something immediately. That's knowledge by acquaintance. But philosophers are, so that's three types of knowledge, but philosophers are interested in knowing that. So propositional knowledge. This goes all the way back to Plato. Plato talks about this. So for a long time, the consensus, and this goes back to Plato, was that knowledge is composed of three things. It contains, to know something, you must believe it. If you don't believe something, then you can't know it. It would be crazy to say, I know that Washington was the first president of the United States, and then I then proceed to tell you that I don't believe it. So knowledge has to involve belief. And actually not just belief, but confident belief. You must be confident in your belief. So it's not just like, well, I believe it, it's kind of iffy. It's confident belief. So knowledge involves belief, and by belief, I'm referring to confident belief. It also involves, so I may believe that it's raining right now in New York. I'm in California. I may be totally confident that it's raining in New York. And let's say it is raining in New York. Okay, so I not only have a belief, and I'm confident in my belief that it's raining in New York, but it's actually true. It actually is raining in New York. So that's another characteristic that knowledge has to have. It has to be, truth has to be involved. What you believe has to be true. You have to believe it, you have to have confidence in your belief, and what you believe has to be true. But is that enough for knowledge? No, it isn't enough, because I'll give you an example. Let's say I believe it's raining in New York, I'm confident that it's raining in New York, and it is raining in New York, but you ask me then, well, how do you know it's raining in New York? And I say, what's your evidence? Did you see it on TV? Did somebody call you from New York and tell you? What's the evidence? And I tell you, well, I have no evidence. I just believe it's raining in New York. I'm confident that it's raining in New York. And actually, it turns out that it is raining in New York. Now, did I know that it was raining in New York? No. The reason was because I was just lucky. I wasn't justified. I couldn't give you any evidence I don't have any evidence for my belief. So there are three, so that's not knowledge. So what philosophers have come up with is, as a working definition, and this was accepted until around 1963 with Edmund Gettier, but I'll talk about that later. But the traditional definition of knowledge is justified, true belief. To have knowledge of something, you must believe it, and I'll add, you must have confidence in your belief. It's not just a belief, it's a confident belief. You must believe it. What you believe must be true. And your belief, you must be able to justify your belief. That means you must be able to point to some evidence that supports your belief. Knowledge is justified, true belief. That's called the JTB theory of knowledge. So I'm going to stop at this point, and in my next little video, I will talk a little further about that definition and present some problems with it. But for the sake of this video, what I've talked about is simply the basics. I talked about what is knowledge, and I distinguish between three types of knowledge: know-how knowledge, knowing that, and knowledge by acquaintance. What philosophers have mainly been interested in is knowing that type of knowledge that something is true. Another name for that is propositional knowledge that a certain claim or a proposition or a statement is true. And the traditional definition that most philosophers have been happy with, and they still pretty much are happy with it, they want to kind of tweak it a little, is the JTB theory of knowledge, which is knowledge is justified true belief. Okay, I'm going to stop at this point, and then I will do another video and develop these ideas. And so I have to end this. Let's see how we do this. Let's see. This is know-how knowledge. Do I know how to do this? I guess I'll hit this. I don't want to erase it though.